Hey everyone, and a really warm welcome to you all. I'm Mr. Hussain, meal expert at Premier Mountain Communities Consultants, that's PMCC, up in Gilgit-Baltistan. Whether you're a development practitioner, a government official, NGO staff, or a student, I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this explainer today. In the development sector, we so often treat monitoring and evaluation as just a short-term episodic activity, something we do just for the lifespan of a specific project and then completely forget about. But today, we're talking about a major paradigm shift. We're going to explore how to actually institutionalize M&E practices, sustaining them long-term within your organization to drive real accountability, evidence-based decision-making, and lasting development impact.
So here is our blueprint for today's explainer. We'll start with an introduction to M&E sustainability, cover the 6 critical components, and look at some global examples. Then we'll discuss incentives and motivation, overcoming hurdles, and finally, fostering positive cultural change. Let's dive right in.
Section 1, Introduction to M&E Sustainability. So why are we even talking about sustainability? Well, because treating M&E as just some short-term bureaucratic chore, that literally guarantees failure. Without long-term utility, there is simply no logic in having an M&E system at all. If you think about the standard 10-step results-based model, sustaining the system is that crucial final step. You'd actually be surprised. Studies show that a massive chunk of project data collected globally is just never used once a project closes. Poof, all that valuable learning just evaporates. Building the system is honestly just the beginning. The real heavy lifting is keeping it alive. Sustainability and use are totally interdependent. Systems that aren't used simply will not survive. Section 2, 6 critical M&E components. To make sure these systems actually get used, they need constant care across a few foundational pillars. And the very first component is demand. Think about it. If the demand for performance information is completely haphazard, the whole system is going to collapse. Governments, civil society, and donors all need to consistently demand results. We see this demand spark beautifully when big strategic goals, like a national poverty reduction strategy, are translated into results-based M&E. These initiatives aren't just ticking boxes and tracking activities. They practically force an organization to answer the ultimate "so what" question. What are the actual, real-world consequences of our policy efforts on the most vulnerable groups?
All right, the second component is clear roles and responsibilities. You absolutely have to establish formal lines of authority. For instance, you might link central planning and finance ministries directly to your line and sector ministries. But hey, it can't just sit at the top. Data collection and analysis have to flow seamlessly through regional and local levels too. And here is a huge, vital warning from the experts. Avoid creating pass-through layers in your system. What's a pass-through layer? It's when a level of your organization just takes data and passes it along without ever analyzing or using it. When that happens, they completely lose ownership, they lose interest, and that creates this massive vulnerability that inevitably leads to garbage data quality.
Which brings us to our third component, trustworthy and credible information. I want you to really lock in on this essential rule. A remarkably quick way to undermine an M&E system is to punish the people who deliver bad news. An M&E system has got to bring both the good and the bad news completely transparently. If the folks producing results information are facing career roadblocks or political pushback just for reporting negative findings, fear is going to spread through your organization like wildfire, and the reliability of your data is instantly shot. You absolutely have to protect the messengers.
Now, the fourth and fifth components really go hand in hand: accountability and capacity. Look, no part of an organization, or government for that matter, gets an exemption from accountability. But let's be real, sometimes capacity is just weak. When that happens, we need collaborative partnerships. Take Bangladesh, for example. NGOs step in there to help collect local educational data because the government's capacity in that specific area is just a bit stretched. But to sustain that kind of effort, organizations have to commit continuous financial resources. You need to build up sound technical and managerial skills and make absolutely sure your data retrieval systems are modernized and functional.
Section 3, Global Examples of Institutionalization. Now, it's one thing to talk about theories, right? But how are nations actually locking M&E into their governance in the real world? 2 really cool examples stand out here. First, you've got the UK Citizens' Charters, which kicked off back in 1991. These basically function as ongoing, living contracts between the government and citizens. They explicitly lay out performance expectations for public services. We're talking everything from schools to fire departments. Then, over in the United States, there's the Government Performance and Results Act, or GPRA.
This act legally institutionalizes M&E right into federal agencies. It fundamentally mandates that if you want to improve public service, you must have a clear mission, set your goals, and systematically measure the results. No way around it. And it's not just the global north. Developing and rapidly growing nations are taking total charge of their evaluation capacities too. Whether it's anchored right into the Constitution, like in Colombia, driven by a state council resolution in China, or mandated by a ministerial decree in Indonesia, the commitment to institutionalization is crystal clear. In all three of these cases, the resources for evaluation aren't some side hustle. They are mainstreamed directly into their national budgets. They aren't treating M&E as an afterthought. It's structurally, deeply integrated.
Section 4. Incentives and staff motivation. So, a system on paper, totally useless without the people to actually run it. We really have to address the psychology behind what makes an M&E system actually tick. There is a stark night and day contrast between a learning-oriented culture and a toxic one. In a learning culture, you see incentives that encourage everyone to view M&E not as some boring bureaucratic task, but as a genuine opportunity to openly discuss problems. Paying appropriate salaries, actually complimenting people who ask tough questions. And this is huge, giving staff feedback on how their data was actually used. But then on the flip side, you have these toxic disincentives that we've just got to eliminate. Have you ever seen an organization use the M&E unit as a dumping ground for demoted or unqualified staff? Or where performance appraisals only care about basic outputs instead of actual learning? Stuff like that completely destroys the line of sight connecting your staff to the ultimate project goals.
Section 5. Overcoming implementation hurdles. Okay, but let's be pragmatic. Even with the absolute best incentives, building a sustainable system is a highly political, often messy change process. The researcher Harry Hawtrey laid out several massive, frankly inevitable hurdles that organizations face. A lot of the really critical issues boil down to human resources. Trying to recruit and retain talented staff who can act as genuine change agents is incredibly tough. You really have to ask yourself, what is the caliber of the folks willing to risk leaving a cushy, secure job to join a newly formed M&E unit? And can you keep providing them with training as methodologies evolve? On top of that, you've got the headache of maintaining indicator stability. Agency priorities are going to shift, that's a given, but you still need your indicators to remain stable over time so you can accurately track trends and measure real progress. And you have to do all of this while managing the very natural fear and resistance from program managers who might feel threatened by the data. Section 6. Fostering positive cultural change.
Ultimately, overcoming all those hurdles leads us to our absolute highest objective, transforming M&E from just a technical tool into a powerful engine for positive cultural change. To really elevate M&E, the system itself has to be validated. You need to periodically evaluate your own M&E system, maybe bring in some internal or external evaluators, just to ensure your data quality is solid and to confirm that management is actually using the performance info. There was this fascinating 2003 US GAO study of 5 different government agencies, and it found that an institutional commitment to learning from evaluation, what we call a true evaluation culture, was the key to supporting real policy debates. Because when managers actually value and use credible data to test out new initiatives, you start building collaborative partnerships and enhancing true organizational learning. Building this kind of culture, it's a never-ending journey. The demand for capacity building literally never stops. The moment an organization tries to just coast, they're heading downhill. So you've got to keep your champions close. Secure sustained resources right from the very top, whether that's your Ministry of Finance or your Board of Directors. You should look for every single opportunity to link your results information to budget and resource allocation decisions. Make the data matter to the wallet. And hey, if you're just starting out, start small. Begin with pilot efforts. Build these little islands of innovation to prove that results-based monitoring actually works before you try to roll it out across the entire organization. So I want you to take a hard look at your own working environment for a second. The true test of sustainability is how your organizational culture reacts to feedback. We have to figure out, does your organization treat M&E as just a bureaucratic failure that needs to be swept under the rug? Or do you see it as a golden, wide-open opportunity to constructively criticize, adapt, and learn? A truly sustainable system thrives in an environment where critique isn't feared, but is actually welcomed as a stepping stone to making a bigger, better development impact. To wrap this all up, M&E sustainability is deeply, fundamentally dependent on consistent demand, incredibly clear roles, trustworthy information, uncompromising accountability, ongoing capacity building, and positive incentives. I really hope this explainer has equipped you with a much clearer understanding of how to anchor these systems for long-term development impact. Once again, I am Mr. Hussain, MEL expert at PMCC Gilgit-Baltistan, bringing you formal salutations from our entire team. If you found this session valuable for your practice, please go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more high-quality explainers on monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, as well as results-based management. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought. When a monitoring report comes across your desk with negative findings, does your organization bury it, or do you see it as a golden opportunity to learn? How you answer that question dictates the true sustainability of your system. Thank you so much for your time and focus today.